Good evening. I'd like to introduce Dr. Mary Loesing, who is our chairperson for Science, Technology, and Family Consumer Services. Tonight she's going to present on the current state of our science research program, as well as some of our anticipated growth and as we move into the future. So, Dr. Loesing.
Thank you. Good evening. I'm here to, as Mr. Middleton said, present about our science research program. And first, I would like to spend a little bit of time, for those that may not be familiar, talking about what the purpose of the program is, what it's designed to do. We really want our students to be able to explore areas in depth, things that they may be excited about, that they hear about in class, but they don't spend a lot of time on, and have a place where they can focus on that particular interest. We want to teach our students how to conduct research, because of course research is more than Googling something and looking at the first thing that comes up, to really understand what the research process is. We want our students to be able to have a place where they can talk with other students who are equally excited about science, about research, which is not, unfortunately, the complete student body. So we want them to have that place where that kind of conversation can be nurtured. We want to give kids an opportunity to share what they've learned with each other, and then with formal presentations and through competitions they might enter. We want our students, of course, one of the main things is that we want our students to realize that science can not only be a career, it's a major that they can study in college, and they can make it into a career. It's pretty frightening to think that the New York metropolitan area has more people here on an H-1B visa or technical people because we can't fill those jobs. So we really want to prepare our students to fill those roles if that's something that they're interested in taking on. We want them to be able to think as scientists, to be creative, to be able to see things that everyone doesn't necessarily, and that's where most scientific breakthroughs come from. We want to increase their science literacy, and we want to teach them how to communicate with scientists in a professional manner, with the hope that some of those scientists may take our students on as interns. In terms of where our program started out, we began thinking about a research program and made a proposal to create one in January of 2013. And before we made that proposal, we visited different programs. I talked with many research teachers, one who is here today, and met with science chair people throughout Long Island to listen to what they were doing. Some people are very proprietary about what they do, and others are very open to let you come in and see what they're doing. I modeled our program after that in Plainview Old Bethpage, because they have one of the strongest programs out there. And of course, if you're going to model a program, you want to pick one that is excellent. And they've had kids win incredible competitions because of the work that they're able to do. We introduced Science Research 1 in 2013-14. We added Science Research 2 last year. Science Research 3 came in line this year, and next year we'll be adding Science Research 4. So students can take this all 4 years that they're in high school. And they certainly can add it if they decide that they have an interest in it. You don't have to start in 9th grade. You're welcome to join in 10th grade if that's something that you've decided that you're interested in, because of kids mature and their interests change. What we have been doing in Science Research 1, the students learn basic laboratory skills. They try to find project ideas from different news articles, magazine articles, research articles that they find. Many kids in 9th grade are really not ready to read journal articles that are designed for scientists. So they start with a kernel that they find somewhere, and then they lead to the primary source documents. We teach them how to find credible sources for their research, and we also have them enter individual and group competitions such as DuPont, which is an essay competition for individual students, and Genes in Space, which is a competition the students enter to try to get a project to be on a space shuttle. In the second year, they focus on primary source documents. It's very difficult when you're first exposed to these documents to really understand a research article. They're using all kinds of terminology, they're describing research methodology that the students aren't familiar with, and really that takes a lot to decipher and work your way through. They spend time working with biotechnology techniques. They learn how to cut pieces of DNA apart, how to run it in a gel, examine the banding patterns. They also continue to work on projects. One of the things that they've been doing is a project called Barcode Long Island, which is a project through Cold Spring Harbor Laboratory. And what Cold Spring Harbor is doing is trying to identify and make a DNA fingerprint of all kinds of plant and insect species throughout Long Island. And our kids have been contributing to that database. They also can participate in the Toshiba Explorer Vision competition. And in Science Research 3, the students are continuing to work on individual projects because this is the year where they really have to focus on what it is that they're going to research. They try to research and find local scientists that can act as mentors, and they find them by looking at who's doing the research that they're, from the articles that they're looking at the reference list, going online to Stony Brook or Brookhaven Lab or any other research institution that they might be interested in, and seeing what those scientists are doing and reaching out to them. It doesn't mean you make one phone call and that person says, come on over. It sometimes takes hundreds of phone calls to find that researcher who's willing to open their lab to a student, because that's a tremendous time commitment on their part to bring somebody in who's a novice and teach them what they need to know. And we actually have a student this year who made a contact with someone at Stony Brook and will be doing that research over the summer. And that's the goal, to get them to do that kind of research over the summer so that they can enter into some of the more high-powered competitions. Some of the things that we'd like to do going forward are to create a symposium every year where students will present their work from 9th grade up to 12th grade, so we can see how things progress as they go along. Have them participate in the Long Island Science Congress. We'd like to create a summer program between the 9th and the 10th grade year where the students can focus for a week on biotechnology. Some of those experiments really need to run for hours and hours, so doing it in the space of 40 minutes is a difficult task, to say the least. We'd like to have some field trips to a research institution so students can really see what goes on in a research lab. What equipment do they use? There's a difference between what might be used at a facility like Stony Brook versus the kind of big equipment that they use out at Brookhaven Lab. We also want them to see the workflow that goes on. Every moment isn't a eureka moment. There's times when you are washing glassware because that's what it takes to move the lab along, and scientists have to, and their assistants do all those kind of work. We will help our students as they go through the process of finding mentors. We're going to start our Science Research 4 course next year. And what we really hope to be able to do is to create a full-time teaching position for our research teachers. And by doing that, creating that full-time position, the teacher can aid in the setup and guide students in the setup of experiments. And that's a complicated thing because it means acquiring the equipment that they might need. It means students are going to come up with, we hope, some novel experiments. So it's not going to be look in a lab manual and follow the directions. It's really helping the student come up with what is going to be a reasonable experimental design, and then undoubtedly changing it as it goes along because things rarely work the first time out. We hope to have the teacher act as a liaison to outside mentors, to arrange for field trips, and sometimes it's about taking individual students or small groups of students to collect samples. A couple of the kids were out at Fire Island with their teacher on Saturday collecting samples for the barcode program. And sometimes it's very hard for the kids to give up time on a weekend or to even give up time during the school day because the attendance policy, and they don't want to miss There are other classes, which is understandable. If you're taking AP classes, missing those classes means you've missed a lot of information. So we try to make that happen. And we also want our teacher to have the flexibility so that they can work with the students when the students are available. And real heavy-duty research isn't done in 42 minutes. There needs to be a lot more time involved. And if a teacher is teaching Regents and AP courses, those kids have to get equal time. And it's very difficult to make that happen and give all those kids the time they deserve. So what we'd like to do going forward in our first course, year 1, is to have all the students working on perfecting laboratory techniques, simple things as learning how to take data, to make measurements and make sure that they do so accurately. Look at the literature as a class, look at an article together as a class and see what kind of research ideas are sparked. Again, looking at credible resources. We'd like them to enter at least one science competition to present what they've done in the symposium, be that as an actual presentation or a poster session, and arrange a field trip for them to a research lab so they can see what really goes on there. We have some very accommodating scientists that will allow that. In year 2, we are going to have our summer program between years 9 and 10. We're going to have our more advanced techniques, more computerized data collection, things of that nature. Kids are going to spend a lot of time learning about the biotechnology techniques that are necessary for the barcoding program. They're going to work on developing their own projects. Again, we want them to enter at least one competition and to present at the symposium. And that symposium presentation is going to come up in each of the 4 years. In the 3rd year, the students will really focus on techniques that apply to their particular experiment. Because when they decide what they're going to do, you may have several students doing completely different things and need to master techniques based on what they're doing. You know, one of our students now is learning to count things under the microscope, which is a more difficult task than it sounds, especially when the items are so very small. They're going to work individually or with a partner. They're going to look at what scientists locally are doing, again, hoping to spark ideas. We're going to have them enter the Science Congress and or the Google Science Fair. Some projects work in multiple competitions, others don't. It just depends on the nature of the competition. And again, they will prepare work for a symposium. The students that are really planning on the high-powered competitions have to expect to spend the summer between their junior and senior year working on research. Not doing that around other priorities, but that has to be their focus. And when you look at the kids that are winning the science talent search and things like that, those are the kind of commitments they're going to make. They're going to need to have to make. In year 4, the students will continue their research. They will do a statistical analysis of their findings to find out whether or not what they found is indeed significant. They will write a research paper. They will create a presentation, which they will present in the symposium, and then they will have an opportunity to go to the Science Congress, and if the research is high-level research, they can enter into the Science Talent Search or the Long Island Science and Engineering Fair. You notice we left the name Intel off because Intel pulled their sponsorship. So they're not sponsoring it anymore, and I don't know who will be, but the Science Talent Search isn't going away. Right now, we recruit students from, we used to recruit them only from the 8th grade Earth Science accelerated students, and then some of the students said, you know, my friends are in this, in the regular course, and they've got all these great ideas. So we expanded our recruitment first to the entire 8th grade, and now we're going to expand it into the 9th grade as well, so that we can have our own high school teachers also looking and picking kids and talking to them about research and see if we can increase the number of students that will have the opportunity for this experience. Another thing we think that we really need to do is to educate parents about the opportunities that this program has as well as the commitments that are required of the children. And we're going to do that through an orientation that we'll be having sometime before the school year ends for our incoming ninth graders. And we will also be doing that at a curriculum meeting that we will be having for the 8th grade parents before the 8th graders are scheduled sometime in the late fall or early winter, when we can talk about the entire academic program so parents really get a sense of the kind of courses that we offer and the kind of sequences they might want for their child. The other thing we'd like to do is to offer an enrichment program to our middle school students, where we would have some programs from Brookhaven Lab come a couple of times a year and give the students an in-depth lab experience after school, where they can really follow the lab all the way through. Because at the middle school, unless you're in earth science, you really don't get the opportunity for double periods. And so we want the kids to see what that research could possibly be. Does anyone have any questions?
How many students are currently
I believe we have, I'm going to say about 45.
All three levels?
Yes,
Combined 45?
I think so.
Question 50.
45?
We have about 53.
Okay, so I know when the program started, originally there was about 30 kids that started. Those 30 kids, how many of them stayed in the program?
We have
The original 30?
The original 30, we have 12. Which really isn't surprising, because kids decide that this isn't for them. And that's okay, because we'd rather have them find that out now than when they're going to college and realizing that this is the wrong place for me.
So now that I saw the way that you're revamping the program, what are the chances of probably keeping the majority of those 30?
That's certainly our goal, is to keep the majority of them and to keep them interested and meet whatever needs they might have so that they will stay.
So I'm not clear on what the incoming 12th graders are going to be doing. I saw your plan, your revamp plan. What they were doing in the third year is not what those children are doing now. So how do those children now transition to what you're projecting?
Well, they're going to work on a project if they've already got one, or they're going to work on a very targeted project so that they will be able to produce, at the very least, a research paper, and I hope something that they can submit to the Science Congress so that they get an experience of presenting their work.
So they're expected to do something over the summer?
They are, I think we only have one student at this point that is going to a research laboratory.
And my other question is, do we currently have the means, the equipment that will entice children to want to stay in this program?
We have a lot of equipment that we've gotten over the year, but we get equipment also based on the needs and the desires of the students based on the research they want to do. So when they tell us the projects and we start to delve into the projects, we will be able to acquire more so that they can get what they need and pursue their projects.
Okay.
So,
What is the cost of this program now, and what will be the cost to expand it? Have you done those projections?
We spend, I believe, about $15,000 total
Per year,
per year.
and then to expand it?
I don't really anticipate the cost going up.
The only additional cost would be the additional 0.6.
That's right, yes,
of
staff,
the
I'm sorry.
instructional. So that's
Oh, okay.
the staff, the FTE.
I believe in the first year, was it 13,000 the first year that it started?
No, that
No,
was this year.
It's grown.
So that's what I'm saying, so, I mean, we have to keep that in mind. The program started with $0, and now we're starting to now get a little bit of funding.
We've been pretty consistent over the past 2 years with the amount of funding, both for supplies and equipment.
It's still in its infancy, so I think
Yes,
that,
that's a very good point, but it's a 3-year-old program, and any program has its growing pains, and every program has to be tailored to the school where it is. There is no cookie cutter method of just saying, you know, they did it this way in this district, and that's perfect, and we're going to completely replicate that.
I would like to see the children that are incoming ninth grade be able to sustain a lot of those children, that it's enticing enough that you can keep all 30.
You're surprised how
We'd like
smart
to do
kids
that
can
as well.
get.
Yeah, I'd like to see that.
Right.
Just want to go back to something you said before, the 30 to the 12 was kids we had, the kids that left programs? I just wanted
Kids
to-
that after 3 years left the program.
After 3 years, so starting at 30, after 3 years, we had 12. Okay, and then the other question I had is, if we add the full-time teacher, the additional .6, is there any thoughts of having that person, I don't know what their course load would be at that point, if the intention is not a full course load. I'm kind of confused because you have 4 sections, right? You have 4 sections, 6 sections? Okay, so 4 sections would be due to, is a lab involved in it?
Yeah, they have, every other day they have like a
So
double.
there's a lab involved, so that puts it at 6, or whatever. So the full-time person will be doing the 4 sections. We're having 4 sections, so we're not having 4 sections next year?
We are having 4 sections, but research does not meet for a double period every other day. It meets for 1 period a day,
I think
So
the-
we want to increase it to a double period is the point.
1 period a day. I'm
So there
sorry?
is no lab, we want to increase it to a double period.
No, I don't,
So
that's,
I'm missing the purpose of adding the .6, maybe.
to be able, for the teacher to be able to work with the kids when they're available. So the kid wants to come in during their lunch period, student wants to come in at lunchtime, they can continue to work, for the teacher to set up, help them set up the labs, gather the equipment they need, go through the process of finding what it is they need and things like that. And for the teacher also, when you're dealing with many kids that want to do different projects, the teacher can't possibly know every single thing that the kids want to do. So they spend a lot of time learning about those things as well. When students are talking about different genetics projects, there's no way for the teacher to be completely fluent in every single thing the kids want to do. And as they branch out and they go past biology, which really is our teacher's forte, they want to do something in chemistry or physics, that's even more time that the teacher is spending to make sure they're as familiar with the topic as possible to properly guide the students.
Is there anything, just throwing things out there that I've heard and researched, is there any provisions in there for that teacher to be doing any kind of grant writing to try to offset some of the costs? Because other districts, science research teachers, I know do some grant writing. There's lots of grants out there that can offset some of that cost and cost of
They do that
equipment and things like that.
Yeah, kids do that already. I know for a fact
Not
that
the
kids do
kids, the
that.
teacher.
Yeah, I know the kids do that.
Not the kids, the teacher.
Oh, the teacher himself? I know that the students in 9th grade wrote
I'm
grants.
saying, would that be
But
part
his
of the time
assistants,
that
yes.
we're increasing the,
Not all of it's gonna be student contact.
right, that's what
So
I was
some
trying to
of it
figure
would
out.
be- Some of it would
the
be time
explanation of-
to make contact with other labs, to universities, make contact with granting organizations and apply for grants. Absolutely, it wouldn't all be student contact time.
And this is for biology only, not
No,
chem and not?
no.
Okay.
No, it's for whatever the students are interested in, but that's why it's important for the teacher to have more time, because the teacher can't be an expert in every discipline, and they need to be able to familiarize themselves with what the students want to
But
work
it's
on.
been typically biology only, or you want to
Um,
expand it into others?
It's been typically more biology than anything, because the students are naturally attracted to that in many cases, and there's a lot of things they can do, because some of the research institutions like Cold Spring Harbor have reached out to schools to get them involved.
And 9th graders take living environment, so they're
Right, that
naturally,
helps,
they're
yeah.
learning about biology while they're taking their first research class.
Correct?
You can say with the hard sciences, or you can include social sciences also?
Absolutely.
Social science also?
Yes, I would love to, as we go on, expand it to social science, expand it to math. There's a lot of growth potential.
Does the seniors have the opportunity to actually work in the lab this coming year?
It really would depend on whether or not they find someone that will let them work in the lab. It's not a simple process, because I was talking to some neuroscientists the other day. They won't let you in their lab unless you're 18. So there are a lot of restrictions. You can't work with vertebrate animals, things like that. So certainly, we're always open to the possibility of getting kids in wherever someone finds them. But when you're a small program and you're new, many of these researchers are used to, okay, I know if I go take a kid from another school, I know what that school is used to sending me. I know that it's going to be, I'm going to have a smooth transition. So that's one of the great things about having a kid get in right now, because that scientist will now know, we've sent you this wonderful student, they'd be more open to taking another Connect Quad kid hopefully next year.
So with the teacher being full-time, this will also help the
Yes.
students have that opportunity
Absolutely.
to make those contacts. And I don't think a child's gonna know how to make those contacts.
Well, that's part of the process of teaching them how to do that, because the students have to be the ones reaching out, the teachers have to help them do that, compose a professional email and so forth, because the scientist wants to see that the student is committed and the student is interested in this. It's not the case where, you know, someone else is going to set this up for you, because then the researcher doesn't have any sense of whether you have the commitment that it's going to take to show up there every day. You know, and let's face it, sometimes you're going to be doing some grunt work in the laboratory because that's what the lab needs to move on, and you have to do that with a smile on your face and get ready to do what's next.
The person, I'm still confused about the person and the person who's now currently teaching. They are obviously a full-time teacher.
Correct.
But their workload is split between research and something else. So how much of their workload is in research right now?
Right now, they are teaching Research 1 and 2, and then right now, Research 3 has been more independent study, and they also teach AP Bio and a living environment class. We found that independent study didn't work well for us, so we are going back to traditional meeting times for Research 3 and 4. So they will have
So that's why.
designated contact time with
So
those
just
students.
teaching 1 and 2. Okay, I was trying to figure out that. Didn't make sense with adding point 6 if there was already 3 existing classes.
Now,
That's
this
what's
year,
So,
children
so
are
3
currently,
is, they're kind of on their own.
these kids
Right,
are
I mean,
on
they
their
check
own.
in, but as you can imagine with students, they have varying priorities, and when they have a choice between their AP course and research, of course we know they're going to pick the AP course, and we can't blame
Okay, so
them.
there'll be 4 sections, obviously. That'll be the workload. And then the additional, are there going to be lab periods, or are they going to kind of be floating periods where the kids will be able to
Floating,
check in?
that's
So
right.
how is that going to work with the teacher and their responsibilities? Are there certain periods, or they're not going to be available 9 periods of the day?
Well, they're going to work it out with the kids, and, you know, you may be 7 period one day and 6 period another day. They'll work it out with the kids. The kids are very good at finding time when they're available and making the teacher aware of it. So that's why we need the flexibility, because the kids may have a test in one thing one day and not want to do it, have that period available, but the next day they do, and as long as the teacher doesn't have a class that period, and frankly, I'm sure with research, this Research 4 student wants to come into Research 3, they're going to welcome them in and let them do what they need to do. But we need them to be able to have that flexibility.
I've been doing a little research, and I don't think there's any other district, as far as what I saw, that has only a part-time teacher dedicated to this. I see Saylor's a full-time teacher, I see one of the districts have a full-time teacher, so.
Yeah, many of them may have started that way, but they went to a full-time teacher because they really needed them to be able to have, the students needed to have access to the teacher. And in many cases, a research room is a great place for the kids to hang out and have that camaraderie with other like-minded kids and, you know, have those discussions that moves their project along because they're talking to somebody and they get an idea spark, and that's a great way to have that happen. And when they're getting ready to present, you want them to present to their classmates because their classmates didn't do that research, and they need to be able to know that they're making their project clear to somebody who really isn't an expert in that topic.
I know the benefit of having a full-time teacher. My son's program didn't align with his teacher, so it was very hard for them to meet up. So,
It is, absolutely.
so
And
with
the
that
kids,
flexibility
so-
with the children, yeah, I think it's easier.
I agree. Questions?
Thank you, Mary.
Thank you, Dr. Loesing.
Thank you.
I'm sorry?
Thank you, Dr. Loesing. Next up is a presentation by Christina Poppy, our Director of English Language Arts for Connect. Her presentation focuses around some changes in the federal government and the requirements with regards to students completing their FAFSA quiz. And I'll let her finish that stuff on the entire presentation. So, Christina Poppy.
Good evening, everybody. How are you? I am here to speak with you on sort of the forefront of a bit of a change to the landscape of our senior year experience in 2016, 2017. And part of this does have to do with what Mr. Middleman mentioned, the change in the FAFSA